Hi there. This is a video to demonstrate a technique I'm asked about quite frequently, which is a technique to make the blacks in your image truly black. Now, this problem isn't really a consideration at all if you're looking at something just on the web or just on your screen, but where it becomes a problem is when you're printing an image out, any detail, any inconsistencies in your black background will be noticeable in the print. So this is really a demonstration that is appropriate, in particular for print work. I use this technique when I'm correcting a still life image with a black background and when I want the black to be a completely pitchy black with absolutely no detail. Please excuse my voice, by the way. I'm on day 10 of laryngitis. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, or that I've already done in point of fact, is I've opened up the image and using Camera Raw, I added the amount of contrast that I wanted and I used the black slider and I added a little extra black to the blacks just to make them as dark as I could. And if I look at this on my screen, it seems like everything's fine, but if I print it, I'll begin to see some issues. So one of the first things I do is I go to my Adjustments tab, and I make a Levels adjustment. And this levels adjustment will ultimately be deleted, but this is a levels adjustment that is intended strictly for the point of previewing where I might have issues in my image. So what I'm going to do is just use the sliders here, use the midterm, here you go, the midtones, excuse me, and the highlights, everything, just really brighten the image up to the point of absurdity. Now, obviously, it looks like heck, that's okay. What I'm trying to see is the areas, and if I zoom in, you can really see them, where there is like lint on my black velvet background, or you can actually see when you look closely that I have two separate pieces of velvet on the background here, and so you can see the line between them. And so what I would like to do is just make that disappear, make it so that is not visible. Now you could go in and make a black layer and make a layer mask around this whole thing and do it that way. But one of the methods that I've found is very forgiving for edges of things in particular and sort of makes your masking of it a little bit more quickly is to use a selective color adjustment. So I'm going to leave this levels adjustment on so I can preview kind of where my problem areas are. And then I'm going to click on the background layer here, my image layer, and I'm going to go back to my Adjustments tab again, and I'm going to make a selective color adjustment. So I'm going to click on that adjustment, and when I click on that, I have some options, and what I want to do is where it says colors here, I'm going to go down to the blacks, and I'm going to make my blacks blacker. Effectively, selective color will allow you to choose any of the colors in the sort of tonal range here, or the color range I should say, and it will allow you to make them have a different sort of blend of color. So you could make your black, for example, a blue black or a yellowy black or something like that, or you could make your cyan shift a little more towards the green, etc. But in this case, I'm going to use my blacks, and I'm going to make my blacks blacker. And in order to do that, I'm going to, move this slider up as high as I can to 100%. Now again, my image looks like heck, but I'm not concerned with that. I am actually going to mask this in, but I'm going to mask it in, as I said before, in a way that I find to be much more forgiving than using a selection and doing it that way. So what I'll now do is I have this selective color adjustment, and if I zoom out to see the whole image, you can see even with that really aggressive levels adjustment, it is actually really making those blacks very pitchy. So what I'll then do is take my selective color adjustment and I'll change the layer mask so that the entire adjustment is hidden. So I'll do a command on a Mac, it's a Command I for inverse, so I'll do Command I. Now I've just hidden that entire adjustment. And now what I can do is I'll start with actually just a big aggressive brush and do these large areas here. I'm going to zoom out slightly. So I'll make a really large brush. Oops, I can make it even larger than that. A very large brush. Oh, even larger. Okay, and I'll paint with white in my layer mask. Remember, when you're using a layer mask, white reveals and black hides, and so I want to reveal selectively this adjustment. So I'm going to paint with white, again, in the layer mask and not on the actual layer itself. And at first I'm just going to be really aggressive, just get these areas that are nowhere near the actual detail parts of the picture. I can get those a little bit better in just a moment. Okay, and now what I'll do is zoom in, and I like to use the Command plus option to zoom in. I'll zoom in and I'll get fairly close to my pheasant here. And I'm going to get, again, kind of a medium-sized brush. I just can't seem to pick my brushes today. And I'm going to have it, I don't know, somewhere in the 60, 70% range for the hardness value. And then what I can do is kind of just, I hate to use the word sloppily, but I'm going to just kind of move along the edge. I don't want to overlap too much here, but it's fairly forgiving, okay? So even those little hairs you see, or little feathers, I guess in this case, are still showing fairly nicely. If I overlap like that, I'll darken the edge too much. I don't want to do that. So you do have to be somewhat careful, but not nearly as meticulous as you might need to be if you were doing a full-on mask. And then if I kind of, I'm not going to do this entire thing because I don't want to bore you to tears, but if I kind of work my way around it like this, then once I turn off my levels adjustment, you can see that I've pitched out that black pretty well, and it's got like a nice edge where you can see detail on the edge. I haven't lost these little fluffy bits of the feather or anything like that, but I've been really, I hate to use the word sloppy, but I've been able to do like sort of a quick and dirty on this masking bit. So I just usually kind of go around and sort of cruise all the way around. And then when I get to the entire thing completed where I just have some larger areas, and I can be a little aggressive here. Those feathers may be dark enough that I'm going to have a little bit of a problem with them showing. However, I'll say that in this case, I don't know that they show even in the original detailed shot anyway. Oh, I even accidentally oh no, I didn't, excuse me. So that looks pretty good. And I couldn't actually see those in my shot anyway, so even if I was a little bit over the edge there, it was not mission critical really. If I want to make a straight line, by the way, in my mask, I can shift click from one point to the other, and that'll kind of get me through. And I could just sort of cruise around here, and it's going to do a pretty good job, as I said, of cleaning those areas up. And then as I get in, once I've done the edge, I can kind of go back and do these other bits that aren't quite along the edge, and I can do those a little bit more sloppily and zoomed out. And by the time you're done, you have a pretty kind of quick and dirty way of getting the layer mask and getting your image so that the overall blackness of the blacks should print really nicely. That's it.